I'm going to make sure I got that out there. So Margot began her teaching career over 27 years ago as a volunteer painting instructor at the Inglis House, which is a wheelchair community in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is currently teaching art at Martin Luther School in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. And she has an open door policy and says, come and join, walk in anytime. Martin Luther School is a K-12 approved private school that serves the needs of students with severe emotional and behavioral challenges, as well as students suffering from trauma, some of whom live on the campus in residential treatment. Margot currently serves on the board of the National Art Education Association as the treasurer for Art and Special Education Interest Group, and also on the board of the Pennsylvania Art Education Association as the chair for the Art and Special Education Interest Group. Active in her professional affiliations, Margot has presented across the country, receiving the Pennsylvania Art and Special Education Association Special Needs in Art Education Educator of the Year Award in 2022. And she was also the lecturer at the University in the Arts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the Art and Design Education and MAT program. And Margot has an open door policy, as I said earlier. So stop by and visit if you're ever in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Accessibility in the arts. This session will focus on designing an arts curriculum that is accessible for all students. Participants will learn how to utilize principles of universal design, incorporate adaptive tools, foster social emotional learning, and to troubleshoot classroom management challenges in order to foster inclusive and equitable learning outcomes. And I'm going to pass it on to you, Margot. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia. I'm really excited to be here. I actually was just in Kentucky last week for the NAEA convention, which was fabulous. It was so fun to be in Louisville for the first time. So really, really glad to be here. I am a white woman with shoulder length, light brown hair, purple and blue glasses. I'm wearing an orange t-shirt with graffiti on it and a black jacket with lapels, for those of you that are having a hard time seeing me. I guess I'm going to have to ask you to advance, Cynthia. And I have so many slides, so my apologies. Thank you. All right, and you can advance again. Cynthia gave me a really nice welcome. So as you all know, I'm the K through 12 art teacher at Martin Luther School. And our goals today are to learn how to design lessons universally, utilizing principles of UDL. We're going to discuss the equitable use of adaptive tools and accommodations that we can put into place. We'll learn how to foster social and emotional learning, as well as discuss some classroom management strategies. And please, if at any time you have a question, don't hesitate to, I mean, we're a pretty small group. I don't mind if you just jump in, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to type into the chat. I know Cynthia said she was going to keep her eye on that for me, because once I get talking, I always have a tough time keeping track of everything. So please don't hesitate to chime in with questions. And also please know that I am giving this presentation as a visual arts educator. So if you need clarity on something or want to know, well, how does that work for me as someone who teaches music or someone who teaches dance or theater? So please don't hesitate to ask for clarification. So we can go on. So what is universal design? It might be, I mean, many of you may be familiar with UDL, but for those of you who aren't, my dramatic pause will be the cue for the next slide. Thank you. For those of you who aren't, universal design is when things are designed that benefit everyone. If we look at the steps here, they're not just steps, but there's also a ramp. So this is giving access to folks who might ride a wheelchair, or someone who might be on a skateboard or have, you know, a push cart or something, or a scooter. Universal design keeps access in mind to everyone. We can go again. The Guggenheim Museum, anybody who's visited the Guggenheim, it's a very accessible museum because it just spirals up and down. So, but however, I do think it's a little noisy because of the design of the building, because of the materials that it's made of. It can be really noisy if you've ever been there for like a really busy exhibit. So it might be not be very inclusive for those who might have sensory challenges, but it's definitely, as far as museums go, it's a very accessible space. Curb cuts. Those are examples of accessible design. They don't just benefit folks riding wheelchairs. If I'm walking my dog, if I'm pushing a granny cart full of groceries, it's something that benefits everyone. And we can look at another curb cut that's even more inclusive, where we have the pebbled um, marks on where it inclines, so that if I might have a visual impairment, I know that it's going to be sloping, right? We have that crosswalk, we have that bright orange, which is really good for folks who might need a little extra help with visual challenges. So essentially, oh, we can go forward. Thank you. So universal design is basically being able to plan buildings, products, environments, and experiences to be enjoyed by the widest possible audience. Everybody can use that design regardless. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we go back? Everyone can use that design regardless of their ability, to the greatest extent possible. There's no need for extra adaptations. And it's carefully considered so that we can remove any potential barriers, right? And that's what we do when we lesson plan. If we're planning universally, we're taking all of that into consideration, right? When we write our lesson plans, when we design those learning experiences for our students, we want to think about, well, what could be a barrier and how can I remove that? Maybe there's that student that might need an accessible tool. Well, so if I have a student that has difficulty gripping, then maybe I want to keep that in mind as I'm planning that lesson, and thinking about the tools that they might need, but also thinking about designing that lesson. I mean, we should never want to make an accommodation for a student that might read something like, well, if they can't do it, then they can do something else. That's not designing universally, right? A universally designed experience for our students is something that everybody can do, maybe with minor adaptations and accommodations, but it's an experience that everyone can enjoy. So this is an example of a flow chart. The CAST, C-A-S-T, is a really great resource for anybody who wants to deep dive into universal design. And I'm not going to read this very wordy slide to you, but you can see, and anybody who might be taking notes. And again, Cynthia, if you want to share this presentation with our participants so that they have that hyperlink. But when we're designing universally, we're thinking about multiple means of engaging students, multiple means of being able to represent knowledge or that experience, in multiple ways that they can express themselves or act, right? We can go on. All right. So one of the things I really like to use as an educator are cues. So I think there's one more. We can go forward. Thank you. There we go. So using cues simply as a means to call attention. I like to be able to group my students, because I do want them to be able to move about our studio space with a decent amount of freedom, but I also want to be able to get everybody's attention when I need it. So there are many ways that you might design your teaching space, whether you're labeling tables by numbers, maybe you even label your chairs. In my room, actually, we can go forward. Thank you. I like to posterize images of the artists that we're studying for each unit, and I'll hang those posters above the tables where the students are working. So I can say, okay, Vanessa German table, I need you all to push your papers into the middle of the table. So that's another really great way of just being able to kind of corral everybody when you need to. I think it's really important to be able to have a clear way of gathering students when need be. And along those lines, also listening cues. I think, I've seen people teach where they might have a whole repertoire of attention grabbers, whether it's holy, holy guacamole, or, a clap pattern or whistling or whatever that is. my recommendation would be stick to one, because that way your kids are going to master that and they're going to do it well every time. Because when you're constantly changing it up, they're not necessarily going to do that clap pattern or that call and response the right way. They know your clap pattern, they know your call and response. So when you say, holy, holy, they're all going to say guacamole and they know you want your attention. So that's just my tip for you using cues. This is how I structure my lessons very consistently. As Cynthia said at the beginning of our presentation, I teach students with severe emotional and behavioral challenges. 100% of the students I teach have individualized education plans. That means they all have IEPs. They also probably have 504s as well. Many of them are on behavior plans. So it's really, really important for me to be super, super consistent in what I do. And I tell you what, it's not just for students in special education, it's for all students. And I'll tell you why. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. We can go again. Thank you. So every time I begin a class, I start with a warm up. My students know that the moment they come into my art room, there's going to be something on the board for them to look at and think about. And it's always a question. And they will come into my room. We can pretend like my board's this way, and they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, looking at it, because they know that's what's expected. So whether I'm getting those students that are, super rowdy, fresh from recess, or, whether, something went down before they came to art class, they know that they're going to start their class the same way. And I found that's really important. Once we go over our warm up, then I tell them what we're going to do. I go over that agenda right after, and they'll still ask. They'll be lined up in front of the art room. Ms. Wonder, what are we going to do? I always tell you what we're going to do after the warm up. I'm not going to leave you in the dark. So what I do, if we can go ahead, is every day after our warm up, then I'll share our agenda together. These are our learning targets. Today we're going to talk about Deborah Roberts, and we're going to work on our next project. Knowing how art can show how you feel or tell a story is the teaching standard, because we're learning about artists who do that. I think the because is super important, right? Students need to know, like, well, why are we doing this? Well, this is why, because I have these standards that I have to meet. And as you know, I mean, again, these are PA standards. They may be different from Kentucky standards, but I'm sure many of you may write lessons that subscribe to the standards. I put them in kid language, so they understand it. So this is language that the children speak. It's not necessarily what 9.1.5 point E actually says. I've paraphrased it so it makes sense. And that because is a really important piece. We're doing this because we're learning about how artists do that. And we're going to be doing that in our own work as well. I also have what is called the ARVL every day. That is my art room value link. I encourage you, please steal that. Please steal that. Make that your music room value link. Make that your dance studio value link. Make that your theater value link, right? I have them work on kind of core values that I want to see them developing in our space. So every day I'll say, okay, so today it's focus. And when I see people who are focused, I'll say, oh, wow. Cynthia, you're doing such a great job focusing today. I love that, you are like laser locked on this presentation. You're following directions. You're raising your hand. I love it. And then I'll invite them to go over to my ARVL station, which is really, folks, nothing but a bunch of 2-inch paper strips from paper that I could recycle, but turn into these. So they get a paper strip, they put their name on it, draw a little pattern, and then it can go on a chain that goes around the room so the students can recognize their names. Oh yeah, that's my ARVL link. And then I let them know that this is the expectation by the end of the end of class today, everyone will have started their main project. So we know what we're doing. We can relax. We know what's expected of us. So I can kind of calm down a little bit. Okay. We can go to our next slide. All right. So this is how I create buy-in for my students, which can be really tough. I think especially like, teaching artists might even have it even tougher, if you're teaching in a different setting, or you're pushing into a classroom or you're doing a specialized program. So buy-in can be a challenge, especially for those students who are like, I don't like music. I don't like art. I'm not an artist. Maybe they had a bad experience prior to meeting you, right? So how do I get them to buy into what we're doing? This is how. We write a rubric together as a class, and it might look something like this. Before we start a project, I show the kids the artist for reference, and there might be an inspiration. So if we're doing, I'm looking at this where it looks like we're doing self-portraits, I see base face, etc. So maybe we're looking at a portrait artist or an artist who does portraits. So we'll talk about their work. And then we'll look at some examples. I very seldom make exemplars. Two reasons. One reason, I don't have time. I don't have time. The other reason is that my exemplar oftentimes, and I try to make it look like kids' work, but my exemplar might not look like something that they can do. You know what I'm saying? So what I like to do is I like to find exemplars of student work made by kids their age. So when they see it, they're like, oh, wow, that's really tough. And then I can say, yeah, a kid your age made that. So I think that really goes a long way. So we'll look at that exemplar and then we'll sit down and talk. And I'll say, okay, here's an example. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking for this project, we're going to do self-portraits, which are, pictures of yourself. What do you think the first thing we should do for this project is? And I'll ask them. This is written by the kids. Gather your supplies and tools. That's great. Yes, let's do that first. Okay, what's the next step? And again, clearly this was in their language. Start with the base face. I love that phrase. Start with the base face. And then I said, well, how are we going to do our base face? Well, we could draw it. Okay, well, what if people don't want to draw? What if people would rather glue stuff to make their face? Okay, well, we can do a collage. So this way I have the opportunity to kind of like take everybody's temperature, see who has problems with what. Because I know I have kids who have sensory challenges. I know I have kids that honestly really would just rather draw in black and white. They don't want to use color. I have kids that would rather build stuff. So this way we can sit down, figure it out, see what everybody wants to do, troubleshoot that. And then I have a way to hold them accountable so that if we're midway through the project and one of my students says, you know what, Ms. Wonder, I don't want to draw, I don't want to paint, I don't want to collage. I think I want to make mine out of clay. And then we'll look at the rubric and I'll say, well, it looks like we don't have that in our rubric. So here, you need to make it out of clay, make it out of clay. But when we go to grade our work, you're going to have to take that into consideration, because when we finish our project, we have a group critique, and the students grade their own artwork. Me personally, it's just my philosophy. It's not everybody else's. It's my own. I don't believe in grading student work. I think the students should grade their own work. So when they're finished, they can then take this rubric that they've written together and assess themselves. And I copy it down in a Google document. Everybody gets a copy. So the writing is to a minimum. They don't have to copy this stuff down. They can read through it. Did I do this? Yes, check. Did I do this? Yes, check. And I say to them, if you did all these steps, what kind of a grade do you get? And they'll say, and then I'll give them those options for that grade. I won't just say A. I'll be like, yes, A, smiley face, 100, 20 stars, infinity, whatever that is. I know that's going to translate to an A. And I encourage them to, to be reflective about it. And so part of that activity, part of that worksheet will be my grade is an A. And then they do have to finish the sentence because, and I absolutely love reading those becauses at the end, because, it is that reflective piece. And they really do think about, because I worked really well with my partner. I followed all the steps. I didn't give up when it got hard. So they're really having a chance to celebrate that before we even begin our critique. And this provides scaffolding for students who have a difficult time talking about their work. So after we fill this rubric out, and again, our teacher here, think about how this can translate to any of your other activities. This translates to music. This translates to theater. This can translate to a lot of other disciplines. So then after we do that, we share our work. The students will hold up their artwork. They'll have the opportunity to talk about it if they care to. They'll ask their peers for a question or a wish, something someone wants to know more about, or someone wish they saw more of, less of, or something they could do a little bit differently. I model this before every critique, every time, even if I've been doing it for 5 years with the same class, which is never the same class because my kids leave all the time. That's the goal of my school. But I model it every time. And I ask the kids for, I'm like, oh, okay, well, what is your question? What is your wish? And they'll give me one. And then I'll say, well, that was a really good suggestion. Thank you. That doesn't hurt my feelings. And you know what? That's a really great idea. Maybe I'll do that next time. Or maybe if I had more time, I would take your suggestion and do that. And then afterwards, they'll call on a classmate for a compliment, something they see that they really like. And I encourage my students to be specific and I tell them, oh, it's so great to hear your artwork's pretty and tough and awesome and all that good stuff. But please be specific. Why is it pretty? What makes it pretty? So they don't get off that easily. They really do need to be practicing being specific with their feedback. I think it's a really important skill. So this is how I get my kids to buy in and hold them accountable. Oh, we're good. Here's another example of this rubric that I just wanted to share with you. So this is, I love this. Know that you are capable. Make a plan, get your materials, let your teachers know you're ready for model magic. So we got very, very specific. This class, FRIS 24, they are like my little babies. They're like my second and third graders. So we really did want to be very careful about going through these very important steps of letting them know that they're ready, being confident, not getting frustrated. And then they had the opportunity to trade stamps if you want. Our artwork, our tools are very precious to us. Not everybody wants to share. Not everybody wants their neighbor using their stamp. So we put that in as an option. Okay. So this was a few years ago because we officially have our first graduating high school class. Our 12th graders are graduating and I'm super excited. But my school didn't always used to be a K through 8 school. Or it didn't always used to be a K through 12 school. We were K through 8 for many years, long before I joined. So I helped write the curriculum for high school. We got approved. We had a high school. And I'm thinking, all right, how am I going to make this special? Like these are the kids that I've taught for the last gosh knows how many years. High school needs to be a special thing, right? So I had these lanyards made for them. I had my VIP studio entry, all access passes made for them. It cost me nothing. I was able to get the lanyards from our person in IT, and I just, copied the badges with our color copier. And I told the students, I said, y'all are in high school now, and this is your studio. So anytime you are allowed, you may come and use this as your studio. You can quietly work even while I'm teaching. And they were so excited to get these badges. And they all, I mean, these are men that are taller than I, and I'm a tall lady. I'm 5'11". These are men that are taller than me that were so excited to get these badges. They all wore them on their way out their first day of art class. It was adorable, but it really did, again, foster that buy-in. So treating our students the way they want and deserve to be treated, right? The way I speak with my high school isn't necessarily the way I speak with my kindergarten class, right? It's always respectful. But, you know, kids who are helping their little sisters get ready for school, kids who have to cook their own dinner when they get home from school, I think they command respect. They command to be treated like people who are able to make their own decisions. So that went a long way. So this is another buy-in piece. Any of you who go to conferences or go to any of those events where you have the opportunity to snap up free swag, I'll tell you what, the art conferences are great because we get these sponsors and they're always giving away stuff. And I am grabbing stuff left and right. Not for me. I bring it back to my art room, and these are my prizes. So I have a big roll of raffle tickets that you can get from the dollar store or order from one of those inexpensive party companies, and I give out raffle tickets to my students. I'll give them very specific behavior specific praise. Wow, you're doing a really great job. I love that you didn't give up and you're still working on that. Take a raffle ticket, or they can purchase them. So we have. I don't know if any of you are placed in places where students can accrue points. A lot of positive behavior schools do that. We use a point system called Kickboard, where students can earn and lose points based purely on their behavior. So if students are accepting feedback or raising their hand or having good relationship skills or waiting, they can earn points. So they can buy raffle tickets for 1 point or $1 per ticket, or they can purchase one for a staff member. If you can see, I know it's kind of tough to see, we're all on our laptops, but on a bigger screen, you might be able to read that the blue bin is a student raffle and the yellow bin is a staff raffle. I work with a lot of paras and classroom assistants because I teach students who are in special education. How do I keep my paras and my classroom assistants invested in what we're doing? Well, I give them behavior specific praise all the time. And there are many, many times, that a classroom assistant who might be scheduled to take a break ends up having to come with their class and I'll say, oh, thank you so much for helping us and being here to support. Let me put a raffle ticket in. And they get just excited as the kids do when they win. So it really is great. And it's also a really great opportunity for kind of casual modeling where I can say, oh, Mr. Vance, like, wow, you were doing such a good job of raising your hand. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I love that you're participating today. Right. I can use them to model and I can reward them for it. And they get very excited when they get a raffle ticket too. Goes a long way. Everyone in my classroom has a job. And I'll tell you, when I used to work at a Renaissance public charter, it was in a very underserved neighborhood. It was a really tough job. Many of the kids I taught at this school, I ended up teaching again at my current school. Um, and I would have jobs for every single kid in the class, and I had to get really creative, like the librarian, the message carrier, etc. And it was a pretty big responsibility. I have smaller classes now, so I have really just have kind of the basics. And one of my favorite jobs for my students is the ambassador and the doctor. And the doctor ambassador's job is, pretty self-explanatory. If someone needs a band-aid, I don't have to stop teaching. I don't have to send them to the nurse because she doesn't need to stop doing what she's doing to give somebody a band-aid. That wastes her time, right? So I keep a doctor's kit and my doctor can give them a band-aid or a mask if they need a mask. They can also help people feel better, if they're having a bad day. If there's a new student who's joining for the first time that day, oh, hey, please sit next to our ambassador. They'll show you the ropes, right? And we constantly have people coming in and out of the school for tours. And the art room, of course, is the stop. Everybody stops at the art room. My art room's pretty bright and shiny, very colorful. We're always doing great stuff in there. Kids are engaged. So they always stop in the art room. It is so disruptive for me to have to stop teaching and go greet the people that are on a tour because they're potential students, or they're people from the district, or they're people from the MCIU, or they're donors, whatever it is. I don't want to stop teaching. So my students are responsible. My ambassador goes to greet our guests so they can offer them water. And if they get nervous, I have this laminated card so they can just read off of the card. Hi, my name is Aiden and I'm your ambassador. Would you like some water? Here is what we're doing today. you know and more often than not, the kids kind of want to scramble to do it. If for whatever reason the ambassador is shy, there are 5 other people that want to step in and help. So that's been a really great time saver. Other jobs my students have, I have a distributor to pass out supplies, a collector that collects them. I have a waste manager who makes sure people throw their garbage away. I have a polisher who wipes off the tables. I have my doctor ambassador. I have,
Yes,
let's
this is
see who.
Deborah.
Hi, Deborah. Did Deborah have a question?
I'm sorry, you're trying to reach Aaron? Oh, well, the
I'm sorry. I think we forgot we were unmuted. But please, seriously, if anybody does have a question or I'm going too fast or you want clarification, please don't hesitate to jump in. Um, but yeah, I have people who sweep, people who, and I think I have another slide. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself, Cynthia, if you want to go ahead in advance, because I feel like I'm going to get ahead. I think it'll come up again, but I'll circle back if it doesn't. Again, another way we buy in is projects that are relevant, that get the kids excited. I did this unit with my 6th and 7th grade students. We looked at 2 tattoo artists who were differently abled. One artist actually was born with no arms and he tattooed with his feet. And another tattoo artist lost his arm when he was a young child and I think he's actually known as the cyborg tattoo artist. He had a really cool prosthetic arm made that was his prosthetic arm and a tattoo gun at the same time. So we looked at their work and we looked at tattoo flash. And then the students were able to design their own tattoos, but they had to create the flash first. Well, the flash, for those of you that aren't familiar, that's the really ornate kind of, either watercolors or pen and ink or colored pencil designs that we see if you were to go into a tattoo shop. So they had to do the design first, and then they all got transfer paper, the actual paper that tattoo artists use to transfer a design onto the skin. I got it from Amazon. I think it was $11. I still had plenty left over for 2 grade bands. Depending on the politics of your schools, I got permission. I didn't want kids putting things on their bodies and then going back to where they live and having the people that they live with angry with them and me. So they needed to get permission. Not everybody got permission. As mentioned before, I teach students in residential treatment. Sometimes by the time we get around to doing stuff, I can't get through to the incarcerated parent, the social worker, et cetera. So those students were able to actually give tattoos to their teachers. So I had their general ed teachers with sleeves of tattoos. It was very cool. This was a phenomenal project. It cost very little to do, and the kids just showed up so excited every day to work on it. We can go ahead. Thank you. One step back, please. Thank you. Also for buy-in, I try and keep my supplies pretty accessible. I know that's really scary, especially when you're teaching students that, might have those behavioral challenges that might, that you really, want to keep your eyes on. But I've kind of got it down to a system. I like them to have access to supplies. I like them to be able to go and get duct tape if they need duct tape, stamps if they need stamps, glitter glue, etc. But I am very cautious about my supplies. Obviously, no one can leave with scissors. We can't do that at my school. So if you look, those wooden items where you see the colorful Sharpies and the colorful scissors, I can count them. They all have a hole for where they go. I do that with my scissors. Of course, don't want that walking away. So there are ways that students can get alternate supplies, and those are always available. That's always a yes to them. Other ways I get my students to buy in, I mentioned the raffle tickets, the image on the right. That is my Le Art menu, and students can also buy things in the art class with those points they accrue. Again, I'm very aware of my students who live in residential treatment who might not have access to art supplies because they're living in a community. So I give them the opportunity to buy paper, to buy markers and crayons and sketchbooks and things like cardboard and coloring pages and custom coloring pages. So this is a way for students to be able to get the things they need without depleting me of art supplies. I have one student in residential treatment who has probably bought, I kid you not, I think he's bought 6 or 7 sketchbooks, and they cost $1,000 in kickboard points per sketchbook, but he needs them. He keeps filling them up, and that's great. On the left, we see an image of, this is one of my management systems where you notice the crayons. I have a crayon with 5 pieces broken up, my orange one, 5 pieces and make a whole crayon. My crayon monitor, which is another art room job, his or her job or their job is to move up those crayon pieces as we're being successful in art class. So we're doing a great job. They'll move a crayon piece up. They don't even have to ask me. They can just go and do it. But if I notice that, like, we're not earning that right now, I might say, if they get 5 crayon pieces, they get a check for the day. 5 checks, the whole class gets to pick a prize. 10 checks, we have a snack party. And that works really well. And again, this is my disclaimer, folks. I know that we want to be motivating our students intrinsically. We want them to do the right thing because it feels good, right? You want to teach them that. It feels good to do the right thing. It feels good to be successful. It feels good to do what's expected of you. However, we have commodified a lot at my school. So those extrinsic rewards, well, they're working on that as a group. So we're working as a team. We're working as a community to earn this prize. So yeah, it's conflicting, but it also works for me. And you know what? They've earned it as a class. So I'm okay with those extrinsic motivators. We can go on. All right. So I'm going to talk real quick about adaptive tools and flexible seating. Also try to be mindful of my time. So we have plenty of time for questions. We can go ahead. All right. So adaptive tools don't have to be really expensive. I actually did a workshop on in a 20-minute workshop on how to make accessible tools from cardboard. There's so much you can do with cardboard. It's great. You can make grips. You can make a stamping tool. You can take a piece of cardboard and pull that first layer off so you have all those little bumps underneath. You can take that cardboard, you can stick it under the table for a sensory tool for someone who just needs a little fidget. Nobody needs to know about that. We can go ahead. And just another note, again, I want to be inclusive. Our music teacher came to me one day and he had said, we have a student who is a gunshot victim and one of his hands can't grip. And so the music teacher came to me and he said, what am I going to do? We're drumming right now. What can I do to help him grip a drumstick? And I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite adaptive tools, which is the pool noodle. And I just, I collect pool noodles. I cut them into sections. It's great for gripping a drumstick, a paintbrush, a marker, a pencil. It's great for stamping. It's the possibilities are kind of endless. So that's my other tip is definitely the pool noodles are great. You don't have to spend a lot of money on adaptive tools. You can make them. And if you need more advice on that, if we run out of time, definitely shoot me an email. I'll be happy to help you out with that. All right. So I also, with my adaptive tools, I don't like to keep them separate. I don't have a separate area for adaptive scissors. They all live together. Because everybody can use them. Just because it's an adaptive tool doesn't mean it's for someone who has a hard time gripping or pinching or holding. So again, we can stay here. Again, I do realize I'm very lucky. I can order these tools. I have these tools in my room. So it's very easy for me to say, oh, I have enough for everybody to share. It works out fine. So I do realize that. But if you're able to, it's really great to have enough. I don't have enough necessarily for every single student, but enough for several students to be able to use and share. And that's something I do on purpose with a lot of my supplies. We just finished a couple units where my students were using a cool temperature glue gun. And I have enough glue guns for every single student to use one. But you know what? I only put 2/3 of the glue guns out so that they take turns and share. Again, builds relationship. So this is my art room. I like to cover my fluorescent lights. Couple reasons. Fluorescent lights are terrible. A lot of folks, a lot of students who are autistic have a problem with them. They might hum too, which is really tough. So this not only deadens the light, but also deadens the sound a little bit. These are flame retardant, and I can say I have battled with our fire chief a lot. And I lost my first round of light covers because they were fabric that my students had made, but they weren't flame retardant. So I had to go ahead and fix that. So let me just save you the pain and anguish. So yeah, consider your lighting situation also. We can go ahead. So another tip for those of you who are visual arts educators, I love doing collage, but I also realize that flipping through a magazine, and again, this could be those of you that are using this for poetry writing. Go through your magazines first and rip out the pages that you want. That way you can edit the Victoria's Secret ads, the perfume samples, things like that that can be distracting or inappropriate for students. So this way I can, and yes, it takes time. It does. So I'll pour through my magazines and I'll put them in sections so students don't get stuck having to look. I'm just looking for a cat. I'm just looking for a cat. They don't have to, because they can go to the animal bin and see if they can find a cat there. I do trust I do give my high school students a little more trust. I'm okay giving them a magazine, but that's because we've built that relationship and they know my expectations. I also offer flexible seating, that office chair. Students can purchase. Yes, I've monetized everything in the art room. They can purchase that armchair for 100 points to sit in it for class. And I have to keep tags to know who's had the last turn so it doesn't become an issue. I also have wobble chairs, regular stools. I don't mind if kids stand up where they work. I don't mind if kids work underneath the table, as long as they're not ruining anybody's good time. In fact, I usually keep a couple big boxes accessible. You can turn those into really cool flexible seats. I will never, I kid you not, this actually happened. One of my 8th graders was obsessed with a box in my room, and that was his reward. If he did his work, and again, he was a student that, like, we had a great relationship, but let's face it, we might not teach our students' favorite thing. Some of my students' favorite thing is gym, and that's okay. That's okay. I can defer to their phys ed teacher. I know that you enjoy that more. You're an athlete. That's cool. But I do need you to get the work done that is expected of you. So this student of mine would do his work, and then all he wanted to do was get in the box. That was his reward. That was his flexible seating. I think he felt safe there, and I think it was a nice space for him. I also have things around the room like weighted blankets, headphones for students that might be a little overstimulated, that need the volume turned down, and fidgets. The fidgets they can also purchase, because those can be a problem too. So I like to monetize those. They have to pay 100 points to use them. All right. So motivation and management. We're going to try and move this along for you folks. All right. So when we butt heads, all right, it's time to get started. Let's go. And they're like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm going to talk a little bit about power plays, giving choices, avoidance, breaks, fidgets, and being done. So let's push on. When kids say they're done, they're done. I'll tell you what, there is no power play.
It's a waste of time. So is she gone?
There's
Okay.
There is no power play you're going to have with your students that you're going to win, because even if you win, you actually lose. So, I might just say, okay, this is, this is not happening. That is your choice. And then there's either going to be a consequence, or, okay, all right, I'm going to take this as a loss. All right, let's move on. So I try to give kids a no opt-out choice. Great rule when you're working with students that are autistic or on the spectrum. If you ask them if they want to get started, they're going to say no. Hey, do you want to get started on your artwork? No. Instead, I'd like to give them a choice. Hey, do you want to use green paint or purple paint for this? Would you like to work with crayon or pencil? So just asking that. And then if you're finding that they're still not engaging, then maybe ask them, like, what is it? I had one student that was working on a weaving project, and I didn't realize that the sound of the paper being woven was really triggering for them. So we needed to step back and do some accommodations there. Okay. So when students are asking, or when students are avoiding a task, I want to ask myself, well, is this carry in or carry over? Did something happen before that's causing them to not want to do it, put their head down or be, a little confrontational. Am I asking too much? Maybe I'm asking them to do a task that they feel they are not going to be successful doing. Maybe they need a little bit of help getting there. Um, Maybe the avoidance is environmental. Maybe the room is too hot. Maybe it's too cold. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're tired, right? Are we doing something that's triggering? Right. I'm very cautious to do activities with my students that center around memory or dreams or things under the bed or in the closet, because that can be very triggering and scary. Um, and also, is there a motivator? If a student has a behavior that's getting rewarded, like, oh, if the student acts up, then I'm going to send them to, the dean's office, and they happen to absolutely love going to the dean's office, and maybe they come back with a lollipop. Well, you're just rewarding undesired behavior there. So things to consider. When students say they're done, they're done. They're just done. And, whether they've been working for 5 minutes or 35 minutes, there have been times I've had success by just, saying, asking, well, hey, I tell you what, I know you're done, or I know you don't want to get started on this. Let me just set the timer. We've got 25 minutes of class left. I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And I'm just going to ask you to work for 5 minutes or sit with this for 5 minutes. And then if you're still done, yes, you can be done. Just to give them a little idea of when that time is going to be over. And I mentioned this before, so yes, I'm good with breaks. We need breaks, right? Y'all probably need a break right now. I've been talking a long time. Um, if we go forward, I'm good with that. I like to have enough fidgets for everyone. I like to set a time limit on breaks. They know, okay, sure, you can have a break. When that hand on that clock gets to the 5, your break is done. And again, I monetize everything that happens in the art room. So if you're going to have a fidget, you can pay $100. I tell you what, they think they need a fidget, they'll pay $100 in their Kickboard points to use that fidget. So I don't deny it, but I make them pay for it. Okay. And so this is kind of my break area. I've got a visual timer, so I know I can trip that over. It's a 2-minute timer. If I need somebody wants to take a step away, I say, okay, I'm going to set this for 2 minutes. When the sand is gone, you go back to your seat. And I think this is my last slide. I like to keep books in my room. I like to have a nook for students to just chill. I've had big kids lie down on this carpet and work from there. I've had them take a break and read from there, lying down on my carpet. Again, there's some more of my seating. I scoop up stuffed animals when I see them come up on, Facebook buy nothings, and we get donations all the time. Some of these are stuffed animals that my grown children have played with. So I think it's, and again, I know it might be hard to think, well, gosh, how can I have this space? I teach from a cart, or I have a tiny classroom. Even if that comfy space is just a tiny little corner where someone who needs to step away can step away, it really does make a difference. And unfortunately, I didn't give you a good shot of them, but on the very top of my bookshelf are my aquatic turtles. I have 3 aquatic turtles that live in our classroom, and the students absolutely love going to Turtle Town to take a break. So I think this is either the last or second to last. I think my last slide says thank you. And if anybody has any comments, questions, connections, we still have about 10 minutes or so, I think, left. And I'm more than happy to address them.
And you can put those in the chat, or you can unmute and ask questions. I have a question.
Yes. What is it,
Does
Cynthia?
do your turtles come in for the summer, come home with you for the summer, or do you work all summer?
Excellent question. I do not work in the summer. They ask me every year, and every year I say no. That is when I hike and make art and travel. So I have turtles that live at home because I get lonely for turtles when they're at the school. My school turtles come home and spend they summer with me, and then they go back to school in the fall. So I have actually 3 rooms where turtles live in my home. Yeah.
So
Any
does
other
anybody
questions?
have any questions? Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like, if you're, at the beginning of the presentation, you're excited about something and you feel that I didn't really touch on that enough, or is there something you would like to
Oh,
know
no.
more about?
I thought everything was great. Tamara had a message that said, great presentation, so many awesome ideas, and she's thanking you. How long is your class time? Delero is asking that.
Oh, that's a great question, right? My class time is pretty average. It's about four, actually, that used to be 45 minutes. K through 8 is 40 minutes, and high school is supposed to be an hour, but they always show up late. So it's being about 45 minutes too. And I am very fortunate. They've actually built transition time between my classes. So I'm that lucky art teacher that actually has between 10 and like 15 to 20 minutes to prep and clean up stuff that I didn't get a chance to clean up. So I'm so grateful for that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I know, right?
Love that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to teach. I taught a long time ago, and that is great to have that break in between.
I tell you, this is my forever home. I am living the dream. And I can tell you folks, I've taught in a lot of placements. I've taught in children and youth programs. I've taught in the school district of Philadelphia. I've taught for Renaissance charters. So I've kind of been there, done that. And I really can't say I feel very lucky. I feel very fortunate to be where I am. I'm so grateful for that. And I absolutely love the kids I work with. Um, so come see me if you're ever in the Plymouth meeting area, which is about, without traffic, about 40 to 45 minutes from Philadelphia. I would love to see you.
So last week, at the conference, did you present?
I did present. I presented a session about trauma. I don't want to. I'm not going to overshare because you all aren't prepared for this, so and I don't think that would be fair. But I recently went through a really pretty big dose of trauma, and it really impacted the way I viewed it. In it, as someone who is trauma informed, has gone through the trainings, and so I shared my story, and I shared the story of my students, and those connections. Um so that was my session, and I also received an award, which is really cool.
What award was it?
Oh my
Or
gosh,
is
y'all,
it?
this is the longest award ever, and I'm still not going to remember the entire title, but it's the Peter J. Geiser VSC Council for Exceptional Children Outstanding Special Needs Art Educator of the Year. Something like that.
Wow, well,
From
congratulations and
Thank
well
you.
deserved.
I was
I
absolutely
know it's
humbled.
well deserved.
It was absolutely humbling, and I tell you what, folks, like, receiving that in, the audience of, gosh, I don't know, what was it, like 7 people. I was so nervous to make my speech, and then I went and gave a presentation to 75 folks, and I felt so much more in my element. So,
That's fantastic.
okay.
Katie said, thank you for sharing your work and tips with us. Great as always. Katie was also down in um, Hyman Settlement School with me when you presented there. Jordan says, thank you, Margot, so much. Great information. I'm especially in love with the ambassador idea. Congrats on your award. And thanks, Cynthia, for facilitating. Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't the best facilitator. And there's also a delay, which is kind of strange.
Oh,
Um,
geez. Well, I think
uh,
I think you did it great. Thank you for piloting the slide deck, and I
oh,
love my slides, I love my images, I love my transitions, so thank you for dealing with all of that.
well, thank you for a wonderful presentation. And also, for everyone in the meeting, we're going to put this in our YouTube channel, this recording, but I'll also be sharing this slide deck with you, as well as you said, email. It's okay if I share your email, Margot?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Okay,
100%. So feel free to
I'll do
reach
that
out.
too.
Yeah, reach out at any time.
Well, are there any other, no questions? I don't see any, hear any. All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a wonderful weekend at your roller derby.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I hope you all have a great weekend as well. It looks like we're in for warmer weather, I think, at least up here. So hopefully that's the case in Kentucky. You can maybe get outside, get some fresh air.
Well, and you'll be hearing from me very soon, Margot, in an
Super.
email.
All right.
So,
Thanks.
all
Thanks,
right.
everybody. It's been
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Thank you so much.